We're in the studio. I've got all these lovely speakers. Most people are not listening on this. Most people are listening on this. And I make bass heavy music. The bass is a big part of it. I can't go out there with my beats not knocking and just be like, well, it's on an iPhone, so you don't get, no, you still gotta get these kicks, right? If you use saturation on anything, what you're doing is you're adding harmonics. The human ear is real smart, and it will pick up on things and it'll hear that. So your fundamental frequency, and that's something that maybe your phone can't reproduce or your earbuds or whatever doesn't reproduce, by saturating, you're adding harmonics on top of that, and the ear can hear the harmonics and fill in the information. Well, these are the harmonics. The fundamental is here. And it lets us hear and understand what the bass is, even if the speaker cannot reproduce that fundamental frequency. So if you've got a sine wave bass, and you got that thing low and you are rattling the subs, and when they play this in the Jeeps, it's gonna rattle, it's gonna shake the highway, everyone's gonna know you're coming. Okay, that's awesome. Your iPhone's never gonna reproduce that. But if you add some saturation, it's going to give you some 120. It's going to give you some 240. It's going to give you some 480. Your phone can reproduce those, and those are just the multiples that I did of regular math in my head. It's probably not those frequencies, but it's going to give you those higher things that your phone can reproduce. And then I go back and I listen on the full range system, and now I'm thinking, okay, is this changing my bass sound drastically, or is it just kind of thickening it? Because I may not want to change it drastically. So what I may do is, drive it a little bit more to the point where I'm hearing it, and then roll it back just that one little bit. Or what I might even do is I might duplicate my bass track and then have a distorted bass track and crush that. And then bring that fader down and blend that in. You can do this with a wet dry knob as well, obviously. Most saturation plugins now have a mix knob. The trick with doing it on another fader is you can then EQ that distorted bass, you can compress that you can further affect it in ways that you can't if it were just one plugin on your track with the wet dry. You can't do further processing to that. So whatever you need, if I would start with the wet dry. For instance, like I'm doing with the transients here, this, I don't know why it does that. Obviously, this is giving some drive up top to my snare, to the hi-hats a little bit, round off the edges a little bit on those, but also aggression to the bass, right? Like let's, just a little bit of edge there. And in context, you hear it more because I want the punch of the kick drum to come out, right? The thud and the beef of the kick drum, because of the kind of sound, that actually all resides in the tonal side, just for how it's separated, right? A little bit of grime. I don't know. To me, and it's pretty subtle because, my mix, it's only like 25% of that. Like I'm not doing, that's a lot, Just enough that when that's on a bass challenge system, it's still gonna punch through. It's still gonna bang down there. At least it's never gonna sound like a full range system. But unfortunately, most people are actually probably listening on a bass challenge system. And this is where they're used to getting their music. But your regular laptop speakers, I don't care how nice your laptop is not gonna bang as much as a full range speaker is. But we have to make sure that we hit those people as well as people who do have. It's also why it's important. I've got big speakers here, but I always listen also on a small, like the Aventone Mix Cube, or it's based on the old Oratone 5C. I think it was the 5C. It's like a very small lo-fi speaker, you know? And if your low end is translating down there, it's going to translate up here on the bigger ones. If I can hear that bottom end on my earbuds, you know it's going to be right in the Jeep, right? It's kind of like mixing bass for the lowest common denominator, I guess. And it's important to listen to both, because what you don't want to do is just crank the bass so you can hear it over there, and then you go back to a full range system and the bass is overloading everything and it's dominating your mix, because there is very much something as too much bass. We're not looking for just all the bass in the world, but the bass that we do want, and we may want a lot of it, but it needs to be present, it needs to be solid, it needs to be full, and it needs to work on whatever speaker it's coming out of. Making the music translate wherever you go is a big part of our job. You know, if I do a special effect moment where it goes everything like, I don't know, some huge big super low sub thing, well, everybody can't get the special effects, that's why it's special. You know, I don't know, you know, like everything won't be able to translate, but the key musical elements will have to. That's the job.